Dear fellow truth seekers, thank you and welcome for visiting my channel, MythoReligio. MythoReligio is a series of books about religious comparison studies between the stories in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism and Buddhism, directly from their sacred books and world mythologies, hence the name MythoReligio. The purpose is to retrace the prehistory of humanity, since I am not fully satisfied with either the explanations from the point of view of creationists nor evolutionists. There are so many missing links in both explanations. If you feel the same, then you are on the right channel. In this book series, I will also analyze about the prehistory of humanity from the archaeological records, modern scientific point of view, and other alternative theories, such as the ancient alien theories and Atlantis or Lemuria legends. After thorough research of circa 30 years, I recognize many similarities between all religious stories and even mythologies, and surprisingly, some of them are in accordance or even beyond modern science that have been proven as correct. Thus, I came to the conclusion that all religions must have come from the same source. And all these religious stories and mythologies, although heavily jumbled up, are actually telling one mega story, the true prehistory of our common ancestors. This mega story is quite different than what we have been told to believe and will truly blow your mind, as it is more fascinating than our imagination. If you have watched the earlier videos in this channel, I believe you can see some of the similarities too. If you haven't and you truly want to do a religious comparative study, I suggest that you do so. The best way to do a comprehensive religious study via this channel is by watching the videos starting from number 1 and continue until this present video and so on. That way you will see a clear pattern. For deeper analysis that I cannot share in this platform due to its sensitive nature that leads to the above conclusion, kindly read the books that are available in ebook format that can be found in my website www.mythoreligio.com or the physical books at Amazon in color or black and white version. Dear fellow truth seekers, in my previous video I have shared briefly a similar story between the Greek Prometheus and the Indian Vedic divine being called MythoReligio, who both brought forth or steal fire from the heavens to earth for mankind. In this video, I will share 2 more Greek myths that are similar to the Indian Hindu or Vedic ones. The first myth involves the Greek sky god Zeus chasing a woman in the form of a bull or cow, similar to the Hindu Vedic sky god Deus Pitar, whose name is cognate with the Greek Zeus Pater, or in Latin Jupiter, stemming from Proto-Indo-European Deus Pater, meaning daylight sky father. And the second one is the Greek myth of the Trojan War, found in one of the oldest European literatures called the Iliad, which has similarities to the Hindu epic of the Ramayana. If you want to know more about these 2 Hindu stories, kindly watch the videos in this channel in the World Mythologies playlist. The myth of Zeus and Europa. The Greek goddess Hera, or Roman Juno, was the sister wife of the Greek god Zeus, or Roman Jupiter. She held the title of the Queen of Heaven. She was the goddess of women and marriage in Greek. Although beautiful, Hera was famous for being jealous due to Zeus' infidelity. Hera was commonly seen with the animals as she considered sacred, including the cow, lion, and peacock. Hera chose the cow because it nurtures and she wanted to set a good example for the other gods and goddesses. The peacock and lion were chosen to represent her beauty, luxury, and immortality. Hera was worshipped all throughout ancient Greece. One of Hera's priestesses was a mortal woman called Io, daughter of the nymph Melia. Zeus noticed Io and lusted after her. In one version, Io initially rejected Zeus' advances, until her father threw her out of his house on the advice of oracles. In another version, Zeus then turned Io into a heifer in order to hide her from his wife. Yet another version maintains that Hera herself transformed Io. In a version of the story in which Zeus transformed Io, the deception failed and Hera begged Zeus to give her the heifer as a present, which, having no reason to refuse, he did. Hera then sent the 100-eyed giant Argus to watch Io and prevent Zeus from visiting her. And so Zeus sent Hermes to distract and eventually slay Argus. Then Zeus freed Io, still in the form of a heifer. In order to exact her revenge, Hera sent a gadfly to sting Io continuously, driving her to wander the world without rest. Io eventually crossed the path between the Propontis and the Black Sea, which thus acquired the name Bosporus, meaning Ox Passage, where she met Prometheus, who had been chained on Mount Caucasus by Zeus. Prometheus comforted Io with the information that she would be restored to human form and become the ancestress of the greatest of all heroes, Heracles or Hercules. Io escaped across the Ionian Sea to Egypt, where she was restored to human form by Zeus. There she gave birth to 2 of Zeus' children, a boy and a girl. She later married the Egyptian king Telegonus. Their grandson Danaus eventually returned to Greece with his 50 daughters, the Danates. Later, Zeus fell in love again with another woman, who happened to be a descendant of Io, a Phoenician, part of modern-day Lebanon woman named Europa. The name Europa has been connected to the Semitic term Erebu, meaning to set, or the Phoenician or Assyrian Arab, meaning evening, west, the country of sunset, in opposition to Asu, meaning the country of sunrise, from which the word Asia is probably derived. This name then became the name of the western continent of the world, Europe. So, back to the story. Zeus was in love again, but this time, instead of changing the woman, Europa, into a heifer, Zeus transformed himself into a bull and carried her off to the island of Crete in Greece. Apparently, this story is not only remembered in Greece but also in Phoenicia. The 2nd century CE writer Lucian Samosata wrote about this. There is likewise in Phoenicia a temple of great size owned by the Sidonians. They call it the Temple of Astarte. I hold this Astarte to be no other than the moon goddess. But according to the story of one of the priests, this temple is sacred to Europa, the sister of Cadmus. She was the daughter of Agenor, and on her disappearance from earth, the Phoenicians honored her with a temple and told a sacred legend about her. How that Zeus was enamored with her for her beauty, and changing his form into that of a bull carried her off into Crete. This legend I heard from other Phoenicians as well, and in the coinage current among the Sidonians bears upon it the effigy of Europa sitting on a bull, none other than Zeus. Lucian, the Dea Syria. The Trojan War. The Trojan War is among the most important events in Greek mythology and was narrated in many works of Greek literature, including the Iliad and the Odyssey by Homer. Homer was a legendary ancient Greek epic poet. Historian Herodotus estimated that Homer lived at circa 850 BCE. The ancient Greeks generally believed that Homer was a historical individual, but most scholars are skeptical since no reliable biographical information has been handed down from classical antiquity, and the poems themselves seem to represent the culmination of many centuries of oral storytelling. Some historians believe that Homer is not the name of a historical poet, but a fictitious name. The war originated from a quarrel between the beautiful goddesses Athena, Hera, and Aphrodite, after Ares, the goddess of strife and discord, gave them a golden apple, marked for the fairest. Zeus sent the goddesses to the handsome Prince Paris of Troy, believed to be located in modern-day Turkey, who judged that Aphrodite, as the fairest, should receive the apple. In exchange, Aphrodite made Helen the most beautiful of all women and wife of Menelaus, king of Sparta, an ancient Greek city-state in modern-day Laconia, to fall in love with Paris. According to one version, Paris actually already had a lover called Onion, a nymph. However, on a diplomatic mission from Troy to Sparta, Paris met Helen and they fell in love with each other. Paris and Helen eloped and set sail to Troy. Upon discovery, Menelaus was angry and asked the help of his brother to get Helen back. The two kings gathered several Achaeans, Mycenaean Greek kings to help retrieve Helen. There are a lot of details concerning these kings and their journey to Troy, but in short, they reached Troy and a war began. It is interesting that among those details was the story of King Agamemnon, the brother of King Menelaus, husband of Helen. King Agamemnon had a daughter called Iphigenia. One day, King Agamemnon accidentally killed a deer in a grove sacred to the goddess Artemis. She punished him by interfering with the wind so that his fleet could not sail to Troy. A seer revealed that to appease Artemis, Agamemnon must sacrifice his daughter, Iphigenia. In one version, when Iphigenia was about to be sacrificed, like Abraham's son's sacrificial story, a deer or goat appeared and took Iphigenia's place. Early in the epic, Paris and Menelaus dueled in an attempt to end the war without further bloodshed. Menelaus easily defeated Paris, although not killing him. Thus, war broke and many battles took place for 100 years. One of the most famous battles was between Achilles, an Achaean Greek, and Hector, a Trojan, brother of Paris. When Achilles was a baby, it was foretold that he would die in battle from an arrow in the foot. Naturally, his mother, the sea goddess Thetis, did not want Achilles to die. So she took Achilles to the river Styx, which was supposed to offer powers of invisibility, and dipped his body into the water. But as Thetis held Achilles by the heel, his heel was not washed over by the water of the magical river. Achilles grew up to be a man of war who survived many great battles. Patroclus, a relative of Achilles, went into the war wearing Achilles' clothes and armor. He was killed by Hector, who thought he was killing Achilles. Enraged by the death of Patroclus, Achilles joined the war. A duel raged between Hector and Achilles, which ended with Achilles killing Hector and dragging Hector's body from his chariot. Achilles refused to give the body to the Trojans for the funeral until King Priam of Troy, father of Hector and Paris, came to Achilles and pleaded to have his son's body back. Finally, to defeat Troy, a plan was conceived by Odysseus. A giant hollow wooden horse was built under the guidance of the goddess Athena. The horse was an animal sacred to the Trojans. The horse was filled with troops, which were led by Odysseus. The rest of the army burned their camp and left. The Trojans rejoiced, thinking that the armies had finally left. They dragged the horse back into the city. But at midnight, when the full moon rose, the troops came out of the horse and began to attack the Trojans. Most of them were drunk or sleeping. The Achaeans massacred them. Disorganized, leaderless, and disoriented, the Trojans began to fight back, but to no avail. Eventually, no men were left behind in Troy, and the Greeks took all the women who remained for themselves. The Greeks then proceeded to burn down the city of Troy. Achilles was shot in his heel by an arrow of Paris, killing him instantly. Later on, Paris was mortally wounded in a version by Philoctetes. Helen returned to Troy after Paris' death. His brother Deiphobus married Helen until he was killed mercilessly by Menelaus. Onion, the first lover of Paris, still loved him, so when she heard of his funeral, she ran unto his funeral pyre and threw herself into the flames. Herewith, I'm ending this video. In my later videos, I will share and analyze the similarities within the stories that I have just shared with you, and also other stories throughout this channel. I cannot do it just yet, because these stories are intertwined with other stories from other cultures too, and I want you to get familiar with the stories first before I share with you my own theory. Next week, I will share with you some Greek myths that are similar to the Christian stories. Thank you for watching and hope to see you next week.